You know, somehow we've reached a stage now where people are completely cut off from that part of themselves.
Yeah.
The internal, and which is dangerous for a number of different reasons. But number one, they're not going to understand when those hard-earned evolutionary instincts start to signal, hey, you shouldn't be here, like in Chicago. They're not going to listen to that. They're not going to know what it is because they're so out of touch with that part of themselves.
Yeah, and a lot of it is, I think, political correctness. They'll have something override their gut instincts and say, oh, you know, you shouldn't think X about Y. Welcome to Conversations with me, Peter Boghossian. Today I have a conversation with one of my best friends, Matt Thornton. Matt is the founder and owner of Straight Blast Gym. Matt's also a 5th degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and the author of The Gift of Violence. I wrote the afterword for The Gift of Violence. Rob Wolf wrote the foreword. Rob is the best-selling author who's written about diet and exercise, and he is a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Today, we have a conversation that's very candid and very intimate, and we spoke as if there were no cameras on us, exactly like we would have a conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
I don't think that's a mistake.
You don't think it's a mistake?
The only way it would be a mistake is if you're getting hurt or if you're getting punched in the face and taking brain damage. If none of those two things are going to happen, it's only going to make your jiu-jitsu better. I actually think doing MMA in general makes people's jiu-jitsu get a lot better because everything becomes simpler, and just the most important things like controlling space really take on a priority because you don't want to get punched. Controlling the other person's limbs, affecting their base.
So let's just start the
But just to finish, circle back real quick.
Here. Just keep going. Yeah.
But I do think there are certain types of jiu-jitsu you can do that will actually hurt your MMA game.
Oh, deep half and
yeah, that kind of stuff. I mean, they're going to go in there and then it's not going to work.
Not leg locks, but lockdowns.
Mm-hmm. So by you playing around with the MMA like that, which I think every jiu-jitsu player should do, you're going to get a more realistic understanding of the aspects of your game that you would want to rely on in an actual fight.
Yeah,
which is super important.
Yeah. So what I found is I can't. There's no place for me to really rest.
Right.
Like I can't.
Not like you can in jiu-jitsu.
No, and because you're not resting, you're constantly going. I was literally in a pool of sweat.
Yeah.
So I just did the no-gi class.
Yeah.
And then we threw punches for an hour, and I got one of my knees is bad, so I can't kick with that foot, which is kind of a bummer, but I
think it's good. I definitely would.
You do?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
As long as you're not getting hurt.
Okay. And so the other thing I wanted to ask, so I'll just say what that's taught me is what you've said from day one, is you have to do jiu-jitsu as if someone's throwing punches.
Yes.
And you know how you do those, when you do your class, you have people do this, not this, but just, I'm here.
Yeah.
You're getting hit in the head.
Yeah.
Dude, that is so helpful. Like that is, I can't even stress how helpful that is.
Yeah. Now, that was my class at spring camp. So we just had spring camp a month ago, and everybody tries to teach their best material for that because you're in front of everybody. And I was thinking about what I was going to teach. And I had formed a hypothesis over the last year or so that I think people get better at jiu-jitsu faster. The fundamentals of jiu-jitsu, just if you take somebody who's a brand new white belt, they don't know any jiu-jitsu, and my goal is to get them to be a good blue belt or a good purple belt as soon as possible. They'll get there faster, especially with a position like the guard, if you add the strikes. Not slower, but faster. And so I taught my class with an experiment, showing people that and taking them through some drills, and pretty much, at the end of it, everybody pretty much agreed you're going to get better faster because you're forced to work on the things that matter most. What's the most important thing from open guard, bottom?
That distance.
The distance.
And that you try to get on top, you either sweep.
Right. But you just the first thing is just maintaining that distance.
Right.
Absolute most important thing. That's true whether we're just doing jiu-jitsu only or with strikes. But as soon as the other person can let you know that they're punching you in the head, all of a sudden that becomes a priority.
Yeah, okay, so that's really interesting because I've been thinking about what you've said now that I've been doing so long. The things that you've said are like, oh, okay. And what Howder keeps saying is, I think the whole plan, and tell me what you think about this, from, well, maybe even to black belt, but certainly to deep purple, absolutely to purple. You could summarize a single word that should be your goal 100% of the time, which is top. That's it.
Sure.
So if you're on the bottom, escape. If you're on top, hold top.
Yep.
If you're sitting down, someone trying to pass your guard, don't let them. If
Yep.
they do, take top.
Yep.
If you're in guard, try to sweep or get on top. Like you can. So I'll always I'll say to someone like who comes in here as a new white belt, say, "Do you have a plan?" And they'll say no, and I'll say, "I'm going to give you a plan."
Yeah.
It's a multiple choice test, and there's only one letter, and it's A, and it's always top.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself in the bottom, get out. And it's just that one word that you and Howder have been pushing. And now that I'm throwing punches again, I see like, holy shit, like you really, it's a son of a bitch to be on the bottom, even closed guard, open guard, where someone's like taking actual swings at your head. Like you cannot screw around.
Yeah. No, that's true. Howder said I don't know if I'm going to remember this verbatim, but basically 3 things about guard. The first thing is develop a guard that's unpassable. That should be a goal that you begin at white belt with, because it takes a long time to get open guard, right? So you want to have a guard you're comfortable the person can't pass. Number 2, get on top. You're on bottom, the goal is to get on top. And then what he puts in there is number 3, while you're developing number 1, don't let yourself forget number 2, thanks to the kind of seductive nature of playing the guard, because we can be lazy and start to enjoy being down there, and then you forget you're supposed to be on top.
Yeah.
It's really good.
And I think one is awakened from that dogmatic slumber with one head punch.
Yep, 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
You know, so a lot of times when people are going for sweeps, when I'm teaching class, and white belts and blue belts maybe are going for sweeps from open guard and they're failing, you know, a lot of times they're not controlling their opponent's limbs, things like that, right?
Yeah.
They're not controlling the posting hand until it's too late and the person rolls. As soon as we put strikes in, not only do they have to control that distance, but now all of a sudden you're focused on controlling your opponent's arms, body, and hands. And so because you have that control the whole time, when all of a sudden when a sweep presents itself, your hands are already in a good position that you can just take the sweep. Whereas if you weren't worried about controlling their hands and you're not thinking about strikes, what do white belts do? They grab the gi and pull. They're just pulling. They're pulling, and then they have to let go to grab, and they don't have that. So I am confident that left to my own devices, I would teach everybody jiu-jitsu from the beginning with strikes in.
Like 100%, yeah. Well, why do you think, so everywhere I go places, and just literally everybody I meet does jiu-jitsu.
Yeah,
it's cool. It's become I don't want to say a fad, but it's become like a thing. Like,
more than that, yeah.
It's like how baseball used to be when I was growing up. But even then, older people didn't do baseball. I don't know what the analog would be, but it's ubiquitous in the culture, everybody.
Yeah, it's funny. When jiu-jitsu started, it was a weird, like, little thing that the Brazilians brought over. Nobody knew about it. Nobody kind of understood. Then very quickly, it kind of blended culturally with surfing. So you had this crossover between surfers and, you know, jiu-jitsu people started wearing rash guards, which is from surfing and stuff like that. And you could see it just kind of fit together really well. It's like some jiu-jitsu players are into, you know, smoking weed too, and that would be part of it.
Yeah.
But
a lot of them, actually.
Yeah. So there's a heavy blending with surf culture, although I think at this point, jiu-jitsu's probably overtaken that. There's probably more jiu-jitsu players than surfers.
For sure.
But there is a kind of strange crossover with, I don't know what to call it anymore, but the people who pay attention to alternative media and maybe were part of the skeptical community or atheist community in the past. Almost everybody I talk to that's part of that is also in some way involved in jiu-jitsu, which I think is kind of cool, and I don't know exactly why, other than maybe because they're interested in things that are true. So towards it.
Yeah, and I also know, and this is a weird thing to say, but it's true, a lot of people who do jiu-jitsu seriously play Dungeons and Dragons.
They what?
Play Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure, especially when they were young.
Yeah.
If you ask them when they were kids, they maybe don't do it anymore, but yeah.
Yeah. Actually, a lot of people here play Dungeons and Dragons.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the kind of conversation on occasion that we don't usually talk about jiu-jitsu, but that's the kind of conversation that
I never get tired of talking about jiu-jitsu, to be honest.
I never do either, but I think other people get tired of me here talking about jiu-jitsu, so I don't talk about it that much. Okay, so let's talk about your book. There's just so much to talk about. There's just so much. Okay, so let's say that somebody is in a situation in which, are you on the Twitter feed I think it's like Fight Haven or Fight Club or something where they show real.
I've seen that.
Okay, I've found from what I've seen about 98%. I'll be more charitable. 95% of those things can be completely avoided.
Good what?
Can be completely avoided.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, like
Yeah, those are usually
I'm sorry, I
status-based
made a
disputes,
mistake.
Ego-based.
Yeah,
kind of
like
thing.
please, I don't want any trouble. I'm just,
Like two guys fighting outside a nightclub or something.
yeah, and it's just okay. So I'm not talking about the 95%.
Right.
I'm now talking about the 5%.
Right.
So if somebody finds themselves in a situation in which I'm sorry, I made a
have to
mistake.
fight.
Yeah, and there's nothing. They're just not taking no for an answer.
Yeah.
I'm looking at that mace over there.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a weapon or maybe something.
Yeah.
Walk us through that.
That's a good question. So let's go back to what you were talking about the status-based dispute kind of thing that goes on. Mechanically, once the fight starts, we're not going to be talking about a big difference between those things. Like a choke is a choke, a punch is a punch, a takedown is a takedown. And even with those particular fights where you have two guys fighting in front of a bar and it's avoidable or whatever, but if you watch enough of those, if you watch them, I'll use the 95% again because I think it's probably right. 95% of those fights would 100% be won if one of those persons knew how to do a guillotine. That's it. Just that one move. Because in every one of those fights, there's a moment where the other guy's got his head down and he's just wailing, and then they're just throwing blows. If you just go, and then it's over, right?
Yeah.
It's over. And so there is no more effective way to end a fight against a big, aggressive human animal who maybe has controlled substances going through their blood, so who knows, than choking them.
I just tweeted that today where I saw this massive guy and all these cops were on him. And you see that over again. And the guys they're tasing him.
Yeah.
And I've seen a ton of videos where people get tased and they're just like.
Yeah, that's one of the really tragic things of the many stupid things that have happened since George Floyd. But one of them has been that the re-emphasis on removing the chokehold from the officer's arsenal. It's actually the most humane, most effective, safest for the officers, safest for the suspect. A lot of times they can't. And if they do it, if it's like deadly force type situation, then, maybe, but it's not a tool that they're going to be inclined to go. They'd be more apt in many cases because of the department's policies to go for a taser than they would a simple choke.
And I've seen video after video of those tasers not working.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
prongs both have to hit. One could fall out. There's videos of guys that will get tased. They'll fall on the ground and roll. And when they roll, it pulls the wires out of the taser.
And when they get tased, they can still pull up. There's a cop who was shot in the head after he tased somebody, and he went into surgery. But, okay, so someone is in a situation, and it probably does depend if they're a male or a woman or the context, but they're in a situation. This person is just not taking no for an answer. You don't know. They don't really know ultimately if they have friends. Maybe there are people around.
Right.
Most of those can be avoided with a guillotine. The blood chokes are incredibly powerful.
Yep.
I don't care how big you are or what you have going through your system. If your brain doesn't have blood, it doesn't have blood. Whereas a knee bar or an ankle pick, well, maybe a knee bar is different because you can control the body. But a heel hook, you'll snap the knee, but they can keep going.
Right.
But they can't do that from a blood choke.
No.
So
if you're talking about a female, then what I'm saying is even more important because if it's a dispute that she could not walk away from,
right,
then it's probably a man who's trying to hold her down.
Right.
He's physically restraining her and preventing her from exit. And then that's where jiu-jitsu becomes, that's what jiu-jitsu is designed to do, to be able to deal with that situation. By definition, if you can't get away, you're either boxed in, protecting someone else, or somebody has grabbed you.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've been thinking about is, something you told me, and I've heard other people say that I think it's just tremendous advice for people in jiu-jitsu, is if you know that you can tap somebody, put them on top of you. So what I do is the greater the disparity in skill, the worse the situation. Like blue belts or whatever, or maybe someone have my back, or give them a triangle or maybe a full triangle.
Right.
So one of the things I've noticed is if I put a big guy, purple belt, blue belt on me, it will definitely take a while. I can get out of almost anybody at my skill level or below. It takes a while, but in that time, if it's on the street, someone else could be punching me, kicking me in the head.
Yeah.
And comment.
Well, no matter who you are or what martial arts you practice, if you're the world champion boxer or you're fantastic Muay Thai fighter or some traditional martial arts expert, if you're on the ground with somebody, then somebody else could potentially come kick you in the head. So there's nothing particularly. That's always the case.
Right.
Could they have friends? Yes. I could also have friends.
Right.
But who is going to have the advantage in that particular position? It will always be the person that knows jiu-jitsu.
The person who knows.
There's a story about that. Paul Sharp.
Yeah.
So when he was a police officer, he was on a gang team and in Chicago, and he went home and he was getting groceries out of his truck and putting them into the car. And as he was bringing the groceries in, and his family was in the house, some gangbangers came with the intention of killing him. There was, I think, 3 or 4 of them, and they had a pit bull. And they let go of the dog, and then they all jumped on him. It was Chicago, and it was winter, so there was ice everywhere. They all slipped, fell. He's on the ground, dog trying to bite his face, 2 or 3 guys looking to stomp kick him in the face while he's there. And what saved his life there was jiu-jitsu. He was able to control the other body and keep them between him and the dog and everything else. And then eventually the dog went after one of those guys and he choked one of the guys out who's there. Now he's choking the other guy, and they ran away.
Yeah.
But, one of the silly things that I would often hear back in the day about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, an excuse people would have for not training is, well, in a fight, you don't want to be on the ground. So why would you train to be on the ground? It's called a fight because you don't get to always choose where you're going to be. Your opponent often gets to choose that.
Yeah.
So one way or another, you have to be able to defend yourself on the ground. And the hardest people in the world to pin down and prevent from getting back and getting away are going to be jiu-jitsu people and wrestlers.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the things I've been thinking about, so you recommended Liam, that I meet Liam, and I went to his school when I was in Sydney.
Australia.
Yeah, and
Good dude.
excellent trainer, like truly, genuinely excellent guy in training. And then I met Mark, who's a very high class judo black belt. And I've been doing my no-gi stand-up here, my no-gi clinch. And one of the things I notice is that because I go to so many jiu-jitsu schools all around the world.
Traveling.
Yeah, very rarely do they do stand where 2 people are standing up. I have a hypothesis for why this is, but I was wondering what yours was.
What do you mean rarely do? You mean they usually start on the ground instead of
standing? Okay. One stands, one sits, both sit, or they start in a position, but they don't both start standing.
Right. The reason for that's pretty simple. So let me preface it by saying if you're a grappler, you need to have takedowns.
Correct.
Every grappler needs to have takedowns. You need to be able to defend takedowns and have takedowns. So you do need to practice standing, and you want to practice matches standing up. And when you're in a tournament, of course, it starts standing. So there's a million different reasons why it's important to often train from the standing position.
Yeah.
Having said that, jiu-jitsu people, especially ones who are competing on a regular basis, train a lot, right? So young jiu-jitsu guy who's going to tournaments all the time and is maybe 31 or whatever, probably rolls 6 days a week and maybe 1 or 2 sessions a day, of which the majority of it is probably some kind of a live training or sparring.
Right.
So here you have someone training 2, 3...
I'm going to pause you.
Sure.
So a live resisting opponents.
Yeah, timing, energy, motion. It's not a pattern. It's not a choreographed form. So, he's dealing with a resisting opponent. You can't do that kind of training schedule and start every match standing. The impact to your body.
Yes, the impact to your body.
So when people saw jiu-jitsu guys and we're always starting on the ground and we're down there and they're like, why are they already on the ground? So it's just so we can get into the game and start rolling without the constant being taken down. It's just a health and safety thing.
Yeah, and I notice as I get older, when I get thrown, it's not good.
It's hard, yeah.
Yeah, and the other, so my other hypothesis for this is, no matter where I go, this will go to show you the popularity of jiu-jitsu, because they're like there's one on like every other corner now, no matter what country I go to, too.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's such unbelievable. No matter where I go, the mats are so crowded. And I went to someone's school who's famous in Austin, who I won't mention.
I think it's famous in Austin. Every jiu-jitsu person in the world knows who you're talking about. But yeah.
And that was, I mean, it was not a good experience for me.
There's too many people, too many bodies.
No, it was not. It was insane.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't even go and. I mean, I'd never in my life seen a match seen a mat that crowded. But my other hypothesis for why people don't stand is because the mats are so crowded all the time. And one of the
That goes back to the safety issue.
yeah, one of the main reasons I've only been hurt twice in jiu-jitsu, and both times I've been hurt. Once I fell into someone else, I wasn't paying attention, and the other time somebody else fell into me. Both times I broke something.
Yeah.
But I've never been hurt in actual jiu-jitsu.
No. So you've been here for our Ironmans, right? So here in
I did the Ironman.
yeah, and so in Portland gym, we have about 700 and some odd students. And when we do an Ironman, which is when we do promotions, everybody rolls with a bunch of people in a row.
For an hour.
Yeah, or longer. But let's say for sake of argument, there's between 100 and 150 people there, which wouldn't be that uncommon. And a third of them are rolling on the mat together.
Yeah.
And nobody gets hurt, nobody runs into each other, whatever. You can have that many bodies on the mat, not the kind like sardine packed, but sensible. If I had them start the matches standing, we'd have to cut that down by 90%.
Yeah, totally.
People would be getting kicked in the head, people would have somebody falling on their skull.
And that's how you actually break things and get hurt.
Right, you accidentally fall on someone, and so just all kinds of just practical reasons related to longevity and space and not wanting to get hurt for starting down there.
So let me ask you a question. So violence is extraordinarily rare in Sydney. And by sheer coincidence, a terrible thing happened. A friend of mine was there, and his son was the victim of an assault, which is almost unheard of over there. Now, they don't have guns like we do here.
Right.
So is it a big deal? I don't. I mean, it's certainly, nobody was shot. I mean, it could have been far worse, but they don't have machete crime like they do in the UK. But bracketing that, so there was a physical assault, and he was obviously traumatized from that. And I spoke to him, a young kid.
How old was he?
He's maybe 19.
Yeah.
And he was gung ho. And I connected him actually with Mark, the judo guy, and Liam. And he was gung-ho and training, and then he just decided no.
He just what?
He just, what's the expression in English? I can't, so many languages in my head. When pitter-patter something out, he just decided not to do it.
Okay. Didn't like it.
Didn't even try it.
Oh, okay.
Didn't even try it. And so I've been wondering, and maybe I've been watching too many videos on that Twitter feed of people getting assaulted. I've been wondering, like, it doesn't seem to me to avoid something that happened to him, some kind of instance of violence. And he was in that 5% where this guy was just like not having it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem like it's just that much work to learn the basics of defense.
Right.
What would you say, like, 2 years is what you need to do to become reasonably proficient?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I didn't write the book for martial artists.
Right.
And it's not a martial arts technique book. There's no technique in the book at all. I only have one chapter on training. So to help people, if they do decide to train, which I encourage, here's what to look for. This is what aliveness is, and this is what differentiates that. But somebody paying attention that actually follows the advice I lay out in the book, and if they're doing it, and you prioritize your life according to the real threats, not the imagined ones, and you do everything smart like that, your chances of being involved in an altercation like that drop dramatically. So that's the first thing. So somebody that doesn't want to train or can't train, you still need this information, and it's going to help. You'll be able to cut down the odds of you becoming a victim.
Right.
Dramatically. Having said that, if you're in a situation where you're still forced to defend yourself or somebody else, and you can't get away, jiu-jitsu is the perfect art. And the jiu-jitsu you're going to use in a fight is the white belt jiu-jitsu. It's the jiu-jitsu you learn the first 12 months you're in class.
Right.
And so by the time somebody becomes a blue belt, which is like the first belt, and for most people probably takes
2 years?
Yeah, 2 to 3 years. 2 years might even be a little quick, but around that time, I mean, I'm so confident that if they wound up getting in an altercation in the street and somebody was trying to hold them down or punch them or whatever, they'd be fine.
Yeah.
Like they really would. So, in answer to your question, yes. You don't have to be someone who's going to get in a cage and deal with another professional MMA fighter. You don't have to be tougher than somebody that competes in jiu-jitsu tournaments every day.
Right.
You just have to be tougher and more skilled
Exactly.
than the scumbag that decided to pick you on the street.
Exactly.
That's all you have to be.
So I don't know if you've been watching what's been going on in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
What a nightmare.
Yep.
I mean, and yesterday I interviewed Heather McDonald about her book.
Mm-hmm.
And her work is very intense.
She's fantastic.
Yeah, she was running through things, but the crime statistics, particularly the crime statistics by race. But I wanted to throw something out. So these I don't know what wilding or these gangs in Chicago would just basically run and they'd
flash mobs.
Yeah, flash mobs. They'd just destroy cars, assault people.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to me like there's. I was going to say it doesn't seem to me like there's any amount of jiu-jitsu would help, but certainly some fighting would always be better than no fighting, like literally always.
Right.
But in that situation, if you find yourself in some crazy flash mob, what do? You just run, or what?
Well, first of all, you try to, stating the obvious, you try to avoid situations where that's going to happen. You want to keep your wits about you and have some situational awareness all the time, so you can kind of look around and start to see things that just don't look right. I mean, those flash mob type things may feel like they happen very suddenly to a victim that gets caught in there, and I'm sure from their perception that was the case. But I will guarantee you, if you went back and interviewed them very carefully, you would find out that they had all kinds of signals prior to that happening that they ignored, internal primal instincts that were setting off things. Maybe they said maybe they don't want to be racist, they don't want to think about that when it comes to people, and they start rationalizing those feelings, and then it's too late, and now you're stuck. And if you're stuck and you have to get away, again, going back...
Too late.
Yeah, it's too late, but going back to what we've been talking about jiu-jitsu, I mean, we've been hearing in class, some of the fundamental things we teach is just to break grips.
Right.
So maybe that's all you have to do at that moment, is just to break someone's grip so you can get away. Those are still things you're going to learn from jiu-jitsu. But yeah, you don't want to be in a mob, you don't want to be in a riot, you don't want to be in those kind of situations, but there are clues and indications that that kind of thing is building and coming if you pay attention. I'm not saying it's never going to, like somebody could be in a jewelry store and then all of a sudden 30 people run in and they had no idea.
Right.
I'm not going to say that never happens. But in most cases, and even what we've been seeing on TV where those huge groups of teenagers come and it builds, and you can see things that just don't look right, people standing where they shouldn't be standing and people coordinating and plotting with each other and looking for potential victims. You can see that going on around you.
I've also, the more I talk to you, the more I realize maybe I've just been watching too many videos about violence, but I've seen a lot of knife attack videos coming out of the UK and some coming out of Brazil.
Knife attacks?
Yeah. And they're pretty ghastly. I mean, they're
they're awful.
Pretty brutal.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like is there something, I don't want to say, I think it's overly generalizing to say, from these cultures, but if someone is, knife culture isn't really a thing here in the Pacific Northwest. Not really. Not like it is from my understanding when I've read the crime statistics. I mean, you know far better than I, but in London where there seems to be epidemics of these things. What is it's in terms of violence, like the solution, what is the solution to that? The solution would be to carry a gun, but they don't have guns in many places to get a concealed carry. But if you have a knife, then it's automatically escalated. But if you have a knife and don't use it, you don't know how to use it.
Right. So yeah, if you're going to carry a weapon, put time and training on how to use that weapon, how to maintain the control of that weapon. You don't want that weapon to be used against you when it's on your person. And that's super important. Knives, I talk about knives in the book, and I talk about when one of my good friends, Carl Tanswell, was stabbed, who came up with the drills that we teach, the knife defense drills that we teach, which are really the only type of thing I've ever seen that's potentially effective in that situation, which is a nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
But people don't realize how dangerous knives can be. They just have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know if you knew this, but my first black belt was in stick and knife fighting.
Yeah, I think you told me it was a Screamer and
Yeah, Durovio style. And I don't know how much of that stuff is actually useful. Some of it's super useful, but one of the lessons I learned from that is that's why my hands are all cut up.
Yeah.
I got all these gashes in my hands. One of the lessons I learned from that is, if you're off like 1/10 of an inch, if you're off just the smallest amount,
yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
That you're bleeding out.
Yeah.
And there's a kind of, I think people watch all these movies.
Yeah.
Where like this one guy is taking on 10 guys with the bats and everybody's got knives and the knives are flying over the place. And everybody attacks a single, like the Van Damme movies, one at a time. And then there's this, when you used to teach, come into the science and pseudoscience class and teach, you want to not look at the attacker. You want to look at the guys who just,
the demonstrator.
The demonstrator.
Person, the body for the guy that's doing the demonstration.
Yeah, and I think for young men in particular, it's a very seductive idea that they're going to be the hero in their own story.
Yeah.
Where, they're going to take on, to save the damsel or to, do right some injustice, they're going to take on like 5 guys with bats, 8 guys with knives.
Yeah.
Whereas that's just totally unrealistic.
Right.
Completely unrealistic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the good things about taking up some kind of training in a combat sport, again, which I emphasize heavily in the book, is something productive for a whole host of reasons, even beyond just self-defense. I think it's good for human beings to be involved in some kind of combat sport. But one of the side benefits is you learn not just what you can do, but also what you can't do. You have a realistic handle on what you're capable of and not capable of. And that's one of the dangerous things about, people would often ask when we would do the martial arts skepticism talks, or they'd hear me talk negatively about those martial arts, like, well, why does that matter, and this and that. And they don't realize that kind of delusion can be really dangerous if somebody actually thinks they're going to be able to disarm somebody with a knife and stands and tries that stuff, and then they find out the hard way it was bullshit.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. So one of the things that I've been thinking about, having, again, watched all these videos, is I find it hard to believe that somebody would do okay, let me put it this way. I think the only reason people do that is because they don't realize how horrible being in a fight is.
Yeah.
Like, the thing that's cool about MMA or whatever is you can tap and it's over.
Right.
And if you tap and the person doesn't stop, well, that's assault. They should go to jail. Like,
right.
What do you think about the idea that everybody should be required to have that experience once?
Get in a fight?
Get in a fight. Well, yeah, I know I'm going to say this and then people are going to go berserk, but I think ultimately this is really the case. Like, it is
You want them to have some kind of exposure.
Yeah, you want them to realize that this isn't a game. This isn't a movie. Like, getting someone on top of you who knows what they're doing and punching you, it is a horrible experience. This is, maybe they see the UFC and everybody's like... But I think do you think that if everybody had that experience at least once, they would be much less likely, it would be memorable for them, where they're like, no, and the person's just beating their head in?
No, I think that's true. I would want that experience to happen in the gym and not on the street. But I think, again, going back to combat sports, it's one of the great values is you learn what you're capable of and not capable of.
Right.
It's especially true for when we talk about women's self-defense. Obviously, I have a number of female black belts I've given out. If we talk about Leah Taylor, she's a world champion black belt.
Yeah.
She's fully capable of submitting men.
I remember her when she was a brown belt when she came in,
But she also has no delusions or fantasies about what strong men are capable of, because she rolls with men all the time. So she knows how hard it is to deal with somebody that's much bigger and much stronger. Very few people on the planet have a better handle on what that's like than her, because she's gone through that kind of training. And that in and of itself is really going to serve her well, because she's not going to have these... Imagine a woman who spent 20 years, for sake of argument, doing Aikido. And every time she threw somebody, it looked really cool, and she got really high up in the rank.
Yeah.
And she was part of it, but it's all just a big delusion. It's always choreographed. And then one day she gets in a situation and she actually tries to use that use that material, So, no, I think that experience would be great to have in a positive environment, in the gym.
I just wonder if that could be institutionalized in K through 12. It's like everybody has basic self-defense, and they go through they spar with someone who knows what they're doing. I think that if there really is something, they're just I don't even know I don't even know how to describe the feeling of having someone punch you and trying to block, and knowing that you can't stop that. Like, it's pretty horrific.
There's all kinds of lessons that come in there, and I often wonder what happened, because it seems to me, going back and reading the literature, that the Greeks had this figured out, that you had to have a combination of the physical and the philosophical, and at the academies, it all seemed like they were doing all of it.
Body.
Plato was a famous wrestler, wasn't he?
Socrates,
Socrates, yeah. So somehow,
I know was it Plato? Plato, yeah.
Somehow we've reached a stage now where people are completely cut off from that part of themselves. The internal, and which is dangerous for a number of different reasons. But number one, they're not going to understand when those hard-earned evolutionary instincts start to signal, hey, you shouldn't be here, like in Chicago. They're not going to listen to that. They're not going to know what it is, because they're so out of touch with that part of themselves.
Yeah, and a lot of it is, I think, political correctness. They'll have something override their gut instincts and say, oh, you shouldn't think X about Y. Okay, so the book has received, I've read some reviews, it's been great so far. It's selling really well. People are into it. It has some great blurbs. I loved your podcast with Sam Harris. I thought it was fantastic. What do you want people to know? So first of all, why should somebody pick this up and read it?
I think what I'm talking about in the book is something that I think are things and lessons that I think every human being should know.
Right.
There's nobody that I've ever met, or I think I will ever meet, who shouldn't have this kind of information, because it's going to help keep them safe. I think it's going to help them understand humans and violence better. And as I talk about in the beginning of the book, one way or another, we are going to have to establish a relationship to violence. You can establish a phobic one, where you demonize it and try and repress it and pay no attention to it until one day it's knocking at your door and then it's too late. Or you can have a romanticized, fetishized one, where you turn it into like you're going to be a hero in your own movie, and you get delusional that way. But to have a truly healthy relationship to the topic, it will be neither of those things. It will just be very realistic, and it will help put you back in touch with the gifts that we've been given from our ancestors.
Right.
That long, unbroken chain of reproductive success. It's not an accident that everybody here listening to us right now comes from that.
Right.
And it's inside them right now. And to be able to understand that, and to be able to listen to it, understand why it's there, that in and of itself, even without the physical training, will just go such a long way to help keep people safe.
Yeah, it reminds me of the part in Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, when he's in that line and you go to one, like Sophie's Choice thing.
Yeah.
What do you really have when you're in that line? Well, it would seem you have self-defense, the languages you speak, etc. And I think in this case, I really do think the juice is worth the squeeze. I picked that expression up in Australia.
Nice.
I love that
Worth
expression.
the squeeze.
The juice.
Interesting.
The effort that you get, because let's say that you don't love it, but you're just neutral toward it.
Yeah.
You're still getting a good workout.
Yeah.
I mean, the worst case scenario is you control your A1Cs like me if you're older, maybe lower your cholesterol, lose some weight. But in any case, that you're in shape. And the other thing that's been interesting is, so this is another, I'll throw this out, my working hypothesis. It could be totally wrong about this, but when I train in a place, no matter where I am more than once, invariably I become friends may be too strong, but with many people at the gym. I go out to dinner with them. I hang out with them. And I don't know if this is true because I don't do any other activities, but I don't know if the same thing would be true if you did like model trains.
Yeah.
Or if you did something in which, okay.
Yeah.
So you know these people. So you know JJ?
Yeah.
Great guy.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to mention the other person's name, but so there was a person who goes here who worked for the district attorney's office. And they were doing a court case, and it's not voir dire or something. There's some law that if you're a prosecuting attorney or a defense attorney and you know someone on the jury, you have to disclose that to the judge.
I see, yeah.
And one of your guys, I think he's a purple belt at the time, disclosed that he knew JJ.
They definitely don't want anybody in the jury that does jiu-jitsu with somebody, that's for sure.
Totally. Yeah. But the defense attorney said, yeah, no problem. And I would have said, no, absolutely no way.
Right.
But I wouldn't have said that with model trains.
There's a couple.
So you tell me why.
Yeah, okay. The first thing is you have a shared experience of continually being vulnerable physically in a very real way with this group of people. So to get good at any combat sport, and jiu-jitsu especially, you have to put yourself in bad positions over and over again. You have to put yourself in a position where another human being could literally choke you unconscious and kill you if they wanted to.
Literally kill you.
Break your arm.
Correct.
That's what you have to do. And so there's a certain level of trust.
That's exactly the word.
Then that trust gets built over time, and you establish a relationship, and then you watch them go through trials and get tapped, and then they watch you go through trials and get tapped. And so you have this whole context of a really profound set of experiences that you've shared. And you don't have the same, you're not going to have that same kind of rapport with somebody who doesn't do jiu-jitsu. Like they'd be sitting at a table with 6 people who do jiu-jitsu, and there's certain things that person just won't understand about that group.
100%.
I imagine in many ways it's similar to, police officers who've been police officers for 20 years, and they have a certain relationship and bond that they can make with other officers, but it might be difficult for them, especially with topics related to that, to have that same bond with somebody who wasn't an officer, or people who've gone to war. So that's
people have gone to war. I wouldn't want the same similar thing. I wouldn't want anybody who knew each other if they went to war together, like a prosecutor or defense attorney.
For sure. Sure. Yeah. So that's one thing, and that's a big part of it. A second part of it, I actually thought you were going somewhere else with that, but a second part of that.
Where did you think I was going?
That as you've traveled around, you get to go visit jiu-jitsu schools all over the world, and you've had the same experience I think most people would have, in that they're really nice people.
Unbelievably nice.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the reasons that they're particularly nice to me, I don't know this, but I think it's because at the level that I'm at, and yeah, they'll get me, but so what? Like they're going to work to get me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, they're not.
There's certain respect.
There's certain respect.
Yeah. Even somebody that you beat or whatever, if they've achieved a certain level of skill in the art, there's automatically comes with a certain level of respect. Going back to what we talked about before, they know how you earned it.
Yeah.
They know what it took for you to
Can't be faked.
Can't be faked. But that's the other piece to that equation. Not only do you have these bonds that you establish with people that are hard to get in other ways, but also, we have a saying taken from Paul Sharp with SPG is like one of our goals is to make good people more dangerous to bad people.
It's in the book.
Definitely. But one of the things I say in the book too is a nice side benefit of that, making good people dangerous to bad people also makes better people.
100%.
The process instills a certain level of humility, and it's not guaranteed.
Yeah.
It's a necessary but not sufficient component to that kind of maturity. But overall, I think it's definitely holds true.
So you said something to me years ago that I've been thinking about that I just thought was just so interesting. If you participate in an activity like Tai Chi, and you think it's going to make you a better fighter or what have you, and that activity does not align with reality, a necessary consequence of that is that over time you become a dick.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Can.
Yeah, right.
So Well, for the exact same reason it works in reverse. So somebody let's take a kid who maybe got picked on a little bit or awkward or something, nerdy kid, and they're shy, they have trouble talking to people, they have trouble making eye contact with people, they're having trouble in social situations. You take that kid and you put him in my gym, and then you come back 2 years later and meet that kid, you won't recognize him.
I can.
And everything that will
totally
have
see
happened
it.
will be healthy. They'll be more assertive, they'll be more confident, they'll be happier, they'll be kinder, everything. The art will have helped them mature in a very positive way.
Right.
If instead we take that same kid and we put him or her in a fantasy-based martial art, where they're learning and practicing what is essentially a delusion,
Right.
and they're lying to themselves, they're lying to other people. Yes. And then there's this contrived hierarchy, and you get to a certain level and other people are demanded to treat you a particular way, and the whole thing
It's creepy.
is creepy. But that scared, kind of insecure kid,
Yeah.
2 years later, will be a scared, insecure young adult.
Yeah.
So it will have just magnified all those qualities.
Yeah, and they will have to. So the difference between what they think they can do and what they can actually do will have to be that slack will have to be made up by more ritual.
Yeah,
Being a jerk, picking on people they know they can.
exactly. There's another way to put it too, and you know this from all your debates and stuff that you do with people. Sometimes, well, imagine this, but sometimes when you're debating or arguing with somebody from the opposing side, they're not always operating in good faith.
Right.
You know that they don't believe that particular thing, or
Right.
they know what they're saying is not true, but they're committed to whatever reason to defending that position, right?
Right.
I don't think that's healthy for people. I don't think people being forced to defend a position that internally on some level they know isn't true is good for you. I think it's bad in so many different ways that it starts to eat away at your soul after a while.
Yeah.
I think the healthy route would be, what you're always encouraging people to do is just admit, hey, I didn't know, or I was wrong, and use it as an opportunity to learn, which is the opposite of that.
Yeah.
And from that, then I think people can grow and become happier. And so fantasy-based martial arts are just the worst of all of that.
Right. One thing I've noticed when I go around the world and do this, and again, everybody's cool to me. I think part of it, just the culture of jiu-jitsu, because it's a real thing, and part of it's that I'm older now. And people are really surprised when they roll with me because I don't know, they just don't think I'm going to be whatever. But one thing I've noticed is that the culture in different gyms is so different. Do you little things, but they aggregate into big things.
Yeah.
Like I love, Liam said that he got this from you, where they all stand around in a circle. And there's something about that I really like. It's not a line, but it's like a connecting circle.
We do that in our comp teams.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. But one thing, the experience in Hungary was very interesting to me in Budapest, because dude, these guys have nothing.
Right.
I mean like nothing.
Right.
And I think class was $25 a month.
Yeah.
US at the time. And they roll out the mats before class. They don't even have mats that stay.
Yeah. They probably don't have a building, right? They just share the space for a certain time or something.
I don't know if they own the building. I would doubt they own. I would be shocked if they own the building. But it's a long rectangular room. But it's interesting, like, even me, the first day I was there, everybody does fist bumps. Like, you even walk in and you're just people you don't even know.
Yeah.
And there's a kind of I've never seen. And again, maybe I live an extremely sheltered life, but I've never seen these kind of cultures, because I have been behind the scenes in football games. I've just never seen those kind of cultures outside of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Am I missing something?
No, I think you might see cultures like that if you were playing on the team itself. But if you're not, probably not, because the team itself is going to have their practices and stuff. Yeah, they're going to have their rituals and their bonding and everything like that, because they have a shared experience.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about coming to a jiu-jitsu class, no matter who you are, You're just new guy. They don't know you. Showed up from America. You're there.
Yeah.
But hey, you're on the mat. You're going to make yourself vulnerable with them.
Yeah.
You're going to roll with them. They see that you do, and you stay on the mat, and you get tapped and do or tap or do whatever.
Yeah.
You're there.
And that's the other thing is when I go around to schools, because it's obviously, you could hurt someone and they don't know me and I don't know them. So I always make sure to do a few things. Purple and above, just positional submissions, escapes, and hold tops. I never, ever, like literally never submit, ever.
Yeah.
Definitely no heel hooks, even no gi at that level. And then browns and blacks get an honest roll.
Yeah.
But I found that, and usually, almost always, the instructor will come over and want to roll with me after I roll with someone else.
Yeah.
And that's always an interesting experience to see how different cultures do it. But yeah, it's funny when we have these conversations right outside the door. There's another school, which I will not name, and they have the little bus and little kids. And I just think to myself, what a shame.
It is kind of sad.
What a shame that you're. Or, a friend of mine sent me a tweet of his kids in Taekwondo, and I didn't say anything because, he was like really proud of him.
Oh.
But he lumps it all martial arts in one basket.
Yeah.
Because there's no.
Yeah.
But what am I supposed to say? Like, oh, dude, that's a delusion. Like, I don't know him well enough to say. Okay. So I want to say a few things. Rob Wolf wrote the foreword to this book. See, I think he's a two-time New York Times bestselling author. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
I read his first book, which was excellent, and I haven't read his second book. I wrote the afterword to this book. It's explored by a lot of great people. I thought this was a fantastic book. I learned a lot from it, and I just truly thank you for writing it. It's as Dan Dennett said, it is a contribution of abiding significance. And the thing is, a lot of people don't want to talk about certain things. Like they don't want to talk about violence. Everybody wants to say, oh, it's never going to happen to me, or I'm not going to ever know anybody it's going to happen to, or, but they're just, life doesn't have, there's no guarantees like that in life. It's just, that's another kind of wishful thinking.
Yeah.
And the level of, the juice is worth the squeeze by far.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Anything else?
No, I think that's good.
All right, cool. Well, thanks, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Everything we do is under the umbrella of the National Progress Alliance, nationalprogressalliance.org. It's a nonprofit, independent 501c3. Your generous donations keep us going and keep fueling content like this. So please help us out. Make a donation. We very much appreciate it. Thank you.